Greetings and welcome back to LA Quill, where we talk about fantasy, storytelling, and the quiet magic that lives between the words on the page. Today we're diving into a topic that sits at the crossroads of craft, tradition, and reader experience, using literary allusions in your novel. Literary allusions are one of those tools that can feel mysterious or intimidating at first, but once you understand how they work, they become a powerful and elegant way to deepen your storytelling without ever stopping the narrative to explain yourself. At its simplest, a literary allusion is a deliberate echo. It is a phrase, an image, a concept, or just a moment that quietly gestures towards something that existed before your story ever did. That something might be a myth, or a legend, a classic novel, a poem, a historical event, maybe even a work of art. The key idea is that you're not explaining the reference outright. You are trusting the reader to either recognize it or pass over it without confusion. When an author explains the connection explicitly, it stops being an allusion and starts being a reference instead. Allusions live in the realm of implication rather than straight-out explanation. One of the most important things to understand about allusions is that they are optional experiences for the reader. If a reader recognizes the allusion, it adds a layer of meaning, resonance, or delight. If they do not recognize it, the story should still function perfectly well without that extra layer. In other words, an allusion should never be a load-bearing wall. It should be decorative stonework, not structural support. If your story collapses without the reader catching the allusion, then the allusion was misused in the first place. Most literary allusions appear briefly and without any real commentary. There might be a single phrase, a symbolic object, or familiar pattern of events that readers instinctively recognize. These moments often pass quickly, and that in itself is intentional. Allusions are meant to be discovered, not announced. When a reader does recognize one, it feels like a quiet conversation between them and the author, a shared moment of understanding that exists just beneath the surface of the text. Authors most often use allusions as a form of homage. When you allude to a work that shaped you as a reader or a writer, you are acknowledging that your story exists within a long lineage of storytelling. Fantasy in particular thrives on this sense of inherited myth and tradition. The genre is built on retellings and reinterpretations and echoes of stories far older than any one novel. Allusions allow you to participate in that tradition without copying it outright. Occasionally, an author may allude to their own earlier work, creating a subtle thread that connects multiple stories or worlds. This can be rewarding for longtime readers, but it's used sparingly for good reason. Self-allusion can easily tip into self-indulgence if it becomes too obvious or a little too frequent. When done well, however, it can reinforce a sense of continuity and depth in an author's body of work. When you are writing your own novel, especially in fantasy, you may feel a strong urge to allude to the authors who inspired you. This impulse is not only natural, it's really healthy. The danger lies not in making allusions, but in making them too loud. A successful allusion does not pull the reader out of the story to admire your cleverness. Instead, it blends so seamlessly into the narrative that it feels inevitable, as though it could not have been written any other way. One of the most effective uses of literary allusion is to signal transitions. In fantasy, this often means the movement from the ordinary world into the extraordinary one. Certain phrases or images or narrative beats carry a long history of association with thresholds, crossings, and transformations. When you echo those patterns, even subtly, you tap into a shared cultural memory that tells the reader something important is about to change. Consider how a familiar phrase can do enormous conceptual work with just a few words. A simple line can suggest danger or wonder, exile or enchantment without actually spelling any of it out. When an allusion is well chosen, it compresses meaning. It allows you to say more by saying less, which is one of the great strengths of skilled prose. Allusions also have the power to connect the reader directly to the story on an emotional level. When a phrase uses inclusive language, such as we or us, it subtly pulls the reader into the narrative space. The story is no longer happening somewhere distant and abstract. It is happening in a place the reader recognizes as adjacent to their own world, even if that recognition is more emotional than literal. This is one reason allusions can resonate even with readers who do not consciously recognize that particular allusion. Certain ideas and phrases have become so embedded in the cultural imagination that they feel meaningful, even when their origin is unknown. A reader may not be able to name the source of an allusion, but they can still feel its weight and its implication. The story gains texture and depth simply by invoking the shared sense of the familiar or the uncanny. When you decide to use allusions in your own work, intentionality matters. Ask yourself what the allusion is doing for the story. Is it reinforcing a theme? Is it marking a transition? Is it deepening the sense of myth or the history in your world? If the answer is unclear, the allusion may be decorative rather than meaningful, and decorative elements should be used sparingly. It is also important to consider tone. An allusion should match the emotional register of the scene in which it appears. A lyrical, mythic echo might feel out of place in a scene driven by urgency or violence. Likewise, a playful or iconic allusion can undermine a moment meant to feel solemn or awe-inspiring. Allusions are powerful precisely because they carry emotional baggage, and that baggage must align with the story you're telling. Another common pitfall is overuse. When every page contains a wink to another work, the story begins to feel crowded and derivative. Readers may start to feel as though they are reading a collage rather than a cohesive narrative. A few carefully chosen allusions will always be more effective than many shallow ones. Restraint is always a part of the craft. For aspiring and intermediate writers, it can be helpful to think of allusions as seasoning rather than ingredients. They enhance what is already there, but they are not the meal itself. Your characters, your world, and your plot must stand on their own. Allusions should serve those elements, not compete with them. It is also worth remembering that your readers are diverse. Some will recognize your allusions immediately. Others will sense that something meaningful is happening without knowing exactly what it is. Still others will miss the allusion entirely and continue reading without any loss of enjoyment. This is not a failure of communication. It is a feature of the technique. Literary allusions are layered by design. As a writer, you do not need to test your readers or reward only the most well-read among them. The goal is not exclusivity, but richness. An allusion should feel like an open door, not a locked gate. Anyone can walk past it. Some will choose to step through and explore what lies beyond. Ultimately, using literary allusions is about conversation. It is a conversation between you and the stories that shaped you, and between you and the readers who bring their own histories to your work. When handled with care, allusions create a sense that your story is part of something larger, something older, and something enduring. If you're unsure whether an allusion belongs in your work, try removing it and see what changes. If the scene loses resonance or subtlety, the allusion may be doing important work. If nothing changes at all, it may not be necessary. This kind of experimentation is a valuable part of developing your voice as a writer. As you continue to read widely and write boldly, you will naturally develop an instinct for when an allusion feels right. Trust that instinct, but temper it with craft. The most memorable allusions are not the ones that shout their presence, but the ones that linger quietly in the reader's mind, long after the book has been closed. And that's our tale from L.A. Quill today. I'd love to hear about your favorite literary allusion that you've encountered or used in your own writing, so leave a comment below and share your thoughts. Until next time, may your stories always be magical.